now have the pleasure of introducing our first afternoon speaker on the subject, Planning for Medicare, Medicaid, and Long-Term Care. Cheryl Jones is a member with PK Law in the firm's Wealth Preservation Group. She represents individuals and families, business owners, healthcare facilities, corporate executives, foundations, and other nonprofit entities in matters relating to estate planning, asset protection, and elder law, including asset transfer strategies. Her practice includes advising LGBT clients on estate and family planning matters, including second parent adoption proceedings. So please join me in welcoming Cheryl.
And I wore a bright pink color today so that you would all know that we're going to be talking about something very dire and morbid, but nevertheless important, as Patty suggested. So I'm Cheryl Jones, and let's learn how to navigate Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care as we progress to that point of our lives. Medicare and Medicaid are frequently confused by individuals. What I want to educate you about today is the difference between the two and what their impact is on long-term care. What does that mean? When I talk about long-term care, I'm talking about the possibility of one or more of us needing a nursing home, an assisted living, or in-home care at some point in the future. How do we pay for it? How do we navigate it? What does it look like? What does it cost? And realistically, what planning can be put into place now and in the future to help protect assets and ensure that your objectives are met? What are your long-term care options? First of all, when someone gets sick or develops cognitive decline or some other physical condition that requires them to need assistance with feeding, bathing, dressing, toileting, not running out of the house in the afternoons, there are lots of options available to you. Typically, it starts on a continuum. For example, most of us would like to think that if we need someone to assist us, if we become disabled, that we can bring home healthcare providers in. So the first thing that we typically do is bring in healthcare providers to help us dress, bathe, take care of wounds, etc. If anyone out there has cared for an aging parent or a sick spouse, you've probably walked this route. If you haven't yet, then this is education for when you may need to. All right. Home healthcare agencies, that's someone who comes into your home and provides the care you or your loved one needs. Currently, those hourly rates for home healthcare run between $25 and $36 an hour. So extrapolate that out, that could be $25,000 to $30,000 a month in home healthcare expenses. The next thing is an adult daycare center. This is a facility that will come pick up your loved one and take them out for the day. Why do we use it? Because it's a respite for the family caregivers, because it allows a spouse to continue working perhaps, because if your mom or dad is living with you, it lets you make sure that they're protected during the day and that someone's there to care for them and that there's some enrichment activities while you go about living your sort of daily life. Those costs vary depending on the facility that you choose. Then what? The next step up on the continuum is an assisted living facility. Those are typically standalone facilities where someone will provide a room, perhaps with a studio kitchen, but usually nothing more than a microwave and a sink and a mini fridge. And your loved one can sometimes bring in their own bed and chair and furniture and decorate it, and they live there full time. And someone else cooks meals in a communal setting, and there are activities. There are lots of assisted living facilities spread out all across Maryland. Depending on the facility you choose, you could be looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a month for the cost of that assisted living facility. okay? Some of them have memory care units. Perhaps your loved one has Alzheimer's or some other cognitive decline, and they need to be reminded repeatedly. So a memory care unit at an assisted living facility typically adds a few $1,000s a month onto the cost because they're lockdown facilities to prevent people from wandering out. What happens if you need more care that can be provided than in an assisted living facility? That next step up is a nursing home. Most of us have interacted with a nursing home. Perhaps we had a grandparent or another loved one in a nursing home. A nursing home is realistically an awful lot like a hospital. It's essentially a bed or two beds in a room and a chair. Frequently, people can live in a nursing home for some extended period of time. A few years ago, I read a statistic that said the average stay in a nursing home was about 19 months. Why is that relevant? Because the cost of a nursing home is between $12,000 and $15,000 a month, generally. That's a lot of money. Most people don't have $15,000 a month to pay towards a nursing home for 19 months or longer. And if they do, then they're potentially wiping out their life's savings. That's what I'm here to talk with you about today. How you can prepare for this, how you can plan for it, and what options are. So frequently someone will ask me, well, what about these care communities, Mercy Ridge or Oakcrest or Charlestown, where you walk in, you have an apartment, and then you move up through their own assisted living and their nursing homes, right? They can't kick me out. If I run out of money, great. Well, newsflash, they're not charities. Even though they typically don't kick out residents, if you look at a continuing care retirement community, the vast majority of them in their contracts provide that if you run out of money, they are not obligated to keep you there. They will try to use any government benefits available to you, but there's no promise that they'll keep you there until you die if you run out of money. And there are strict rules about how you can use your money. You can't give away your money in most continuing care retirement communities if it would render you unable to pay for your later care. So I always encourage clients, please review all of the resident agreements in any continuing care retirement community and understand your rights and your obligations before you sign up. They're wonderful. Just be aware of what they entail. Okay, so that's realistically your options if you need long-term care. Obviously, interspersed in here is perhaps there's family that can help. If you're lucky enough to have a nurse or a certified nursing assistant in your family as a child, and they have the time and effort and can help you, great. Sometimes families use a whole host of their village to help support a loved one. Sister comes in on Tuesdays from midnight to 8 and spends the night with mom. Brother comes in on Wednesday afternoons. I've seen huge boards where people keep a calendar of all the friends and family who are going to check in to build mom or dad's community. That's wonderful, but just always keep in mind that mom or dad could need a level of care greater than what can be provided by laypersons. And so you're always sort of keeping an eye down the road towards what happens if you need long-term care. So I've given you these horrible numbers. It's very expensive. How do you pay for this? Well, first thing people always ask me is, won't Medicare pay for it? Here's the problem. Medicare is health insurance. It is designed to pay for an acute issue, a trip to the hospital, rehab after a broken hip, but not a chronic condition like dementia that causes you to be unable to maintain your own activities of daily living. Medicare does not pay past a very finite period. And I have a slide that'll give you a little more details of that. So it's a very short period for which Medicare will pay for rehab in a nursing home, or in-home physical therapy. Less than 100 days. Well, once your Medicare days are used up, what's your next option? Long-term care insurance. That's a policy that you take out, that you pay premiums on, that promises to pay if you need long-term care in the future. It is often fairly expensive, and it can be hard to get if you have any pre-existing conditions. The optimum time to take out long-term care insurance is when you're healthy and relatively young, mid-50s or so. But keep in mind that if you don't need a nursing home until you're 85, you will have been paying premiums for a really long time. And you've got to make sure that that insurance has things like an inflation rider, so that as the cost of the long-term care goes up, so do your benefits. And you've got to keep in mind, you may have insurance, but what about your spouse? There is a new product out there. And by the way, I don't sell insurance. I don't get commissions on insurance, but there's a new product out there that I've been seeing, which is a hybrid. It's a life insurance policy that has some long-term care benefits to it. So if in fact you never use the long-term care benefits, there's still a lump sum life insurance policy that can be paid out to your beneficiaries. My other comment about long-term care insurance is this. When I see clients that have it, frequently they'll save it for the rainy day because, oh, mom and dad have caregivers for these few months, but we're really saving it until they go into a nursing home. Guess what? If you save that long-term care insurance for that rainy day nursing home and don't use it when interim things pop up, like, 4 or 5 months in a rehab facility that's not covered by Medicare, or in-home caregivers to help mom or dad, and they die, you've lost all of the benefits that they've paid for. The rainy day for long-term care insurance is when you can use it. It's not down the road. So my 2 cents, use your long-term care insurance when the need arises, because if you run out of money, there's a stopgap. So Medicare pays for a limited window. Long-term care insurance, if you're lucky enough to have it, what happens if those 2 things are exhausted? Your Medicare days are expired and your long-term care insurance either runs out or you don't have it. Well, you self-pay. You write a check for those caregivers in your home, or for the assisted living facility, or for the nursing home. You pay out of your own savings. And that's a big pill to swallow for most families. If you've managed to save a few $100,000 for yourself and your spouse and an IRA, and the nursing home for your spouse costs $15,000 a month, in 10 months, you've churned through $150,000 of your life savings. You're not leaving yourself much to live off of. This is really critical in frankly, big age gap relationships as well, right? If there's a much younger spouse who's watching the nest egg be depleted for their older spouse, they get really anxious about, what does that look like for me? So Medicare, long-term care insurance, self-pay. Medical assistance is Medicaid, not to be confused with Medicare. Medicaid is a government-funded program, and it pays for long-term care for qualifying individuals, but it is the payer of last resort. That's why it's listed last on this slide. Medicaid only pays after the other things have been exhausted, okay? Medicaid is a program that everyone's entitled to if they qualify. So, couple statistics about Medicaid, because people hear Medicaid and they go, oh, I don't want to use Medicaid. First of all, Medicaid is the primary payer for most nursing home patients nationwide. Why? Because most people don't have $15,000 a month to pay. If somebody gets dementia at age 72 and lives for 15 years in a nursing home, they will have run out of money. Second, most nursing home patients are actually getting Medicaid. So they're the primary payer for most. Most people are getting it. And in Maryland, Medicaid patients are the vast majority of people in a nursing home, either because they've exhausted all of their own resources and Medicaid is the payer, or they've done some planning and qualified for Medicaid through an elder law attorney who knows how to do that. So, what's the timeline? When I talk about long-term care timeline, what's the planning that you all should be doing to think about this? Well, if you're under 50, don't worry about it, okay? But remember, you just heard about wills and why everybody needs a will, a power of attorney, a healthcare directive. The first thing is the pre-crisis phase, right? That's when you're healthy and you are just getting all of your affairs in order. The crisis is the need for a nursing home, the need for long-term care. Before you get to that point, I want you to be thinking, and that's what this whole series is about, thinking about getting things in order. Make sure you know what your assets are. That bullet point means, what do you have? Who owns it? Who are the beneficiaries? You would be so surprised how frequently clients come into our offices and they don't know that their name isn't on their house. They just assume it is. But their husband or their wife bought the house before they were married and they never got around to putting their name on the house. They don't recall that they added somebody to a bank account years ago and never took their name off, or that they didn't update their beneficiaries after they got divorced and their ex-spouse is still the beneficiary under the life insurance policy, which, by the way, is going to make them really happy if you die, okay? So know what your assets are. Sit down and make a list. Every bank account, every savings account, every CD, every retirement account. Where is it? What's the account number? Who's the owner on the account? And are there any beneficiaries listed? That's information you should keep and you should update on a regular basis, okay? It is the hardest thing to plan when you're in a crisis and somebody has a sudden illness that puts them in this financial crisis and they don't have any information. The second thing you need to do is either obtain or update your own estate planning documents. Everyone needs a will, a healthcare directive, and a financial power of attorney. And I'm going to tell you that your financial power of attorney should not be an off-the-shelf, off LegalZoom, generic financial power of attorney. If you ever have to do Medicaid planning for a spouse or a loved one, a parent, a sibling, you must have a financial power of attorney that is very, very expansive. You've got to be able to gift away their assets without any limitations. You've got to be able to transfer real estate, to change beneficiaries, to open and close bank accounts, to access their retirement accounts, and you've got to be able to interact with medical and governmental agencies to take advantage of government benefits. And you've got to be able to create a trust, okay? Most off-the-shelf freebie powers of attorney don't have those comprehensive things in them. And in Maryland law, a financial power of attorney has to specifically delineate those things. So when you get into planning for long-term care, make sure that you have a financial power of attorney that's very comprehensive and that's not effective upon disability. It should be effective immediately. It's very hard to use a financial power of attorney that requires 2 physicians to certify that someone's lost capacity. Think about it for a minute. My husband develops Alzheimer's and I need to use the power of attorney. The problem is the power of attorney that he gave me says I have to get 2 doctors to certify that he no longer has capacity. So I go to the bank and they say, Cheryl, great, we'd love to have you access your husband's bank account, but we need you to prove that with 2 doctors that he lacks capacity. If you've never had to get physicians to fill those papers out, lucky you. It can take days or weeks to get those papers done. So I spend my time going to do that and I drop them off to the bank and they go, great, our legal department's going to take a look at these and we'll get back to you. Couple days, maybe a week. By then, maybe it's been 3 weeks since doctor number 1 has reviewed my husband and filled out the paperwork. The legal department comes back to me and says, Cheryl, it's been 3 weeks. Is your husband still incapacitated? Could you get Dr. Smith to give us an updated certificate? Phew. We've made it very, very hard for me to use that financial power of attorney. So make sure your documents are good and that they do what you need to do in a crisis. My next couple bullet points are thinking ahead, consolidate and simplify what you own. There is a generation, this baby boomer generation, and a little bit older than them, that's now reaching 70, 80, that diversified all of their savings amongst multiple financial institutions. My father-in-law had 16 banks that he banked with at the time of his death. I think he must have had 16 free toasters somewhere in a closet somewhere, because back in the day, they used to give you a toaster or something when you opened up a new account. But it was because he never trusted any one bank. If you have stuff spread out over multiple locations and something happens to you, it's going to be really difficult for your family to manage all of those banks, all of those CDs, all of those checking accounts. Start looking critically at what you have. Consolidate things. If you're holding on to Ford Motor Credit stocks in your house, put them with a broker. Make your life simpler, not harder. Looking forward, if someone had to step in my shoes, would they have any idea that I have savings bonds stashed in a secret box under the bed in the back bedroom? Make your life simpler, not harder. Okay? Consolidate. If you're working with a loved one, like a parent, start helping them now. And then my last bullet point is figure out what you need. If you're living in a really big house and you don't need that really big house, it's easier to make the move when you can participate in it. Okay? Figure out what you might want. If your kids move out of state, start scoping out nursing homes and assisted livings and care communities where they live, because most of us want to live near our families at some point. Okay? That's pre-crisis phase. That's the, I'm not sick, sick's not imminent, but I just want to be really efficient and organized. Now what? Now you're admitted to a facility. Some things happened. There's been a fall and you're in rehab. There's been a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, dementia, some cognitive decline. You have Parkinson's and can't live at home anymore. Remember we talked about Medicare only covers a certain number of days? So here's the thing. Medicare is your health insurance when you're 65. Medicare only pays for a facility, a nursing home, after you've had an inpatient hospital stay. Okay? Realistically, there's been something that's hospitalized you. You've been an inpatient in that hospital for 3 days, and now the hospital is discharging you and saying you can't go home anymore. You need to go into a nursing facility. Okay? Medicare kicks in. You must need acute skilled care. I tell people, I can't just stick my father in a nursing home because he's annoying and I don't want to deal with him anymore. He doesn't need acute skilled care. He just can't take care of himself and I don't want to deal with him anymore. There's no dumping somebody in a nursing home and getting Medicaid to pay for them. Okay? So what does Medicare pay for? The first days, 1 through 20 in a nursing facility, Medicare pays for 100%. Days 21 through 100, there's a co-insurance. You are required to pay the difference. Okay. And currently that's $194.50. Sounds like a lot. Most people use their supplemental health insurance to cover that copay. So their United Healthcare premium through ARP or their supplemental policy through Care First will pick up that co-insurance. Once you hit 100 days, Medicare shuts off. You're done. Okay. Now you've got to use your long-term care insurance or privately pay or attempt to qualify for Medicaid. There's a point I want to make that I kind of forgot in the first slide, but that's this. When I'm talking about Medicaid, Medicaid only pays in a skilled nursing facility. Medicaid does not pay for in-home care, and it does not pay for an assisted living facility. That's a huge issue for a lot of families as a loved one declines. They may not need skilled nursing level care. Most of us don't want to be in a nursing home. So you need to be aware that there is a window of time when you're getting in-home caregivers or living in an assisted living facility when that cost is 100% borne by you, your private care insurance, and your savings account. So you've been admitted to a nursing home for some reason. Medicare's covered a portion of your stay, but this is going to be a long-term stay in a facility. Now what? Okay. Hopefully, when your loved one or you was first admitted, you took advantage of that first 100 days to get some planning in place, to look at your affairs, figure out what you've got, what do we have, what are we trying to protect, is our estate planning in place? Look what I wrote. Check your financial status, figure out what's going on. Figure out if there's a power of attorney in place. If the individual in the facility lacks capacity to sign a new power of attorney, your options become severely limited, okay? This is why I put way earlier, get your power of attorney in place now. I can't stress it enough. If someone can't sign a power of attorney and doesn't have one, and they have assets in their own name that need to be accessed, you will need to go get a guardianship for them. That is expensive. It is adversarial. The court will appoint someone to defend their rights, and it takes months. So realistically, don't leave that to be the default. Get some planning in place now. The last point is this. Every single asset protection Medicaid planning case runs on its own facts. If your loved one is only going to be in the nursing home for a month or two, it may be far easier for you, maybe not emotionally, but realistically, to just pay for those 2 months than to undertake a comprehensive Medicaid plan to spend down assets and protect them. If your loved one is 72, strong as an ox, but has cognitive decline, they could live 10 years. You definitely want to consider Medicaid planning. But every case runs on its own facts, its own financial situation, the medical condition of the individual, your own ability to manage all of these things. So there's no one size fits all for Medicaid planning. There's no one size 100% guarantee. And for most of us, we don't have a crystal ball. And if you have a crystal ball, please contact me afterwards and help me out with a few things I need to know about. But we don't have a crystal ball. So every case is a cost-benefit analysis. What's the likelihood that mom's going to outlive her money? Do I want to run that risk, right? So there, you've got your 100 days to do some planning. What's your planning? In my world, we want you, if you're going to apply for Medicaid, to qualify the first time you apply. We don't want you to not qualify properly. It needs to be done correctly. I want to make a point here, and forgive me if any of you work in a nursing home business office, but frequently the nursing homes will say, we can help you with the Medicaid application. They are not doing asset protection for you. They cannot do asset protection for you. Their answer will be spend all of your loved one's money until they qualify, and then we will help you. Please seek independent counsel. It is well worth the cost of a consult with an attorney to talk about elder law planning at the outset than it is to do it wrong. So, how do you qualify for Medicaid to pay for your long-term care? It's a 3-part qualification test, okay? Number 1, you have to qualify medically. You have to need to be in a skilled nursing facility. Remember I said you can't just dump dad because he's annoying, okay? He has to need skilled nursing level care. What's that mean? He needs assistance with his activities of daily living, feeding, bathing, dressing, toileting, and ambulating, movement. 3 or 4 of those is always enough. 1 or 2 of those, case-by-case basis, okay? So first qualification, you got to qualify medically to need skilled nursing care, and you have to be in a nursing home. No Medicaid in an assisted living. The second is the financial piece, and that's this slide. Remember I said Medicaid is the payer of last resort? Realistically, they don't want to pay if you have assets. So if you are single, the date you apply for Medicaid, you have to have less than $2,500 worth of countable resources. That's not a lot of money, folks. What are your countable resources? Generally, it's everything you own or control. It's your bank accounts. It's your CDs. It's your retirement assets. So if you have a huge 401k, that's available to you. What happens when you liquidate your 401k? You trigger a ton of income taxes, right? Medicaid doesn't care. That's not their problem. That's yours. So if you have a $200,000 IRA and no other money, you don't qualify because you don't have below $2,500. You have to liquidate the IRA, pay the income taxes, and then use that money before you qualify. What else counts? Life insurance. If you have whole life insurance and it has cash built up in it, it's an asset. Term life insurance is excluded. Okay. Other types of assets. What about my house? Your house typically is excluded as a resource. Okay. As long as the equity in your house is below about 600 and change. But there's some qualifications for the house I'm going to talk about in a minute. What if you're married? When does Medicaid pay if you're married? Well, if I'm going into the nursing home, I have to have less than $2,500. My spouse is entitled to keep half of our combined assets. Because here's the other thing that people don't realize with Medicaid. If you're married, your spouse's assets are counted in this equation. It doesn't matter if the asset is titled in my name, my husband's name, or joint names. Medicaid looks at it all. It's all available because they look at us as one unit. So I can't transfer all the money to my husband and treat it as not mine. Doesn't matter. My husband is allowed to keep half of our combined assets, but there's a cap on that number. 137.4 is the cap. So if we have $500,000 worth of savings, IRAs, life insurance policies, he can't keep 250. He's allowed to keep 137. All that other money has to be spent down before I qualify for Medicaid. So great. My husband's, let's pretend he's 50 and I'm 65 and I go into the nursing home and he's allowed to keep $137,000 of our life savings to live off of. That's a bummer for most families. That isn't what he and I saved for our whole lives. So how do we protect those assets? Well, the nursing home will say, husband, spend $15,000 a month until Cheryl either dies or you're down to 137.4, and then you can apply for Medicaid. Even I make that mistake. Sorry, everybody. Medicaid. Well, again, that's not ideal. If I'm going to live 1 month, no problem. He'll write a check for $150,000 and be done with it. But if I'm going to live 3 years, or we just don't know, you don't want to be paying all of our life savings down. So what do? Well, there's 3 things we can do to bring that asset level down, to protect that extra money. First of all, spend them. Pay off the mortgage on the house. It's okay to spend that extra money. Now, at least, my spouse doesn't have to worry about a mortgage. You can buy stuff, buy a car, you can put a new roof on the house, you can buy a TV, whatever. But I don't know how that helps him in 5 years when he needs cash, unless he's going to sell the TV, okay? But you can spend them and pay down debt. Can you give them away? Sure, but see that item number 2? Medicaid doesn't pay if you give away your assets to make yourself poor. They penalize you for that, because otherwise we'd all do that, right? We'd give away all of our extra money to our kids and say, here, hold on to this for me. And then we'd apply for Medicaid for our spouse and they'd pay for them in the nursing home. So if you give them away, you have to be careful. For every $10,190 that you give away, Medicaid penalizes you for 1 month of nursing home care. So if I had $100,000 to be of extra money and I give it to my kids, we're going to make the math easy, guys. We're going to divide it by $10,000. Medicaid's not paying for my nursing home for 10 months. That doesn't work. What's our next option? Well, if you're married, then the community spouse can take all of that money, all of that extra money. Let's pretend there's that $100,000 of extra money. The community spouse is the well spouse, the one living at home. And that community spouse can buy something special called a single premium immediate annuity. And here's how that works. Let's pretend I hate pretending that I'm going into the nursing home. Let's put my husband in the nursing home first, shall we? Let's pretend my husband's going into the nursing home. And when we add everything up, we leave him with $2,000 in his checking account. We transfer all the other assets into my name, and I have $500,000 worth of countable resources. Remember that I'm only allowed to keep about $136,000. So that leaves me with $370,000 too much. I can't qualify him for Medicaid. So I can consider how long he might live and just start paying $15,000 a month. Or I can take that $370,000 and I can buy a single premium immediate annuity. Because if you look back at item number 1 on this screen, I'm allowed to spend the extra money. I am buying something for full value, a single premium immediate annuity. What's that annuity? It's a very specialized type of planning tool. It's kind of like life insurance, but it's not. You can only buy this annuity when you're applying for Medicaid. You can't buy it now. And typically what we do is we buy it about a week before we apply for Medicaid. So I write a check for, I forgot my math already, $370,000 to a special annuity company. They agree to pay that money back to me in equal monthly installments over the next 36 months. I turn a chunk of money into an income stream. Okay. So what's income? Everything that comes in each month, my Social Security, my pension, my interest, my annuity payments. That's income. Resources that are counted for Medicaid are the pools of money, cash, bank accounts, etc. What I've done is I've converted a pool of money into income for me. My husband's in a nursing home. The annuity company pays me back. So let's pretend it's $360,000. We're dividing it by 36 months. I'm getting back, what's that? $10,000 a month, every month for the next 3 years. My husband qualifies for Medicaid immediately. I buy the annuity on the 25th of the month, and on the 1st of October, my husband is in a nursing home and needs skilled care. Check off that qualification. Do we qualify financially? There's $2,000 in his name, in his checking account, and I have $120,000 left in mine. That's it. We have nothing else. Check that box off. Did we give away assets to qualify for Medicaid? No. I bought something. I bought an annuity, and now that annuity is not money in my bank account until the payments start next month. And this works because there's a fundamental provision in the Medicaid laws that says my income as the community spouse never has to be spent to cover my husband's cost of care. His income gets paid to the nursing home each month, and Medicaid covers the difference. But my income, once he qualifies, guys, I could win the lottery. I could win $500 million in the Mega Millions, and it wouldn't affect his Medicaid once he qualifies. So for the next 36 months, that entire $360,000 is paid back to me, and I go ahead and put it back in the bank or buy some stocks or whatever. Sounds easy, right? Well, it only works for a married couple, and that Medicaid annuity has to be very, very precisely written, and my money is not making anything. There's no return on my investment, right? So there's zero interest on that money, but who cares? I've protected the whole thing, right? But if I die during that term, that 36 months, the state of Maryland is the beneficiary behind me, and they get paid back for whatever Medicaid has paid on behalf of my husband. So if I die in month 35, I've gotten 35 months back. That's going to pass to my kids under my will. There's one payment left. I die. Oh, well, the state of Maryland gets one payment. They get $10,000. If I die in month 1, there's 35 months left. My husband lives for, 5, 6, 8 months in the facility. They've paid $10,000 towards his care. They paid $80,000. They're going to get $80,000 out of that annuity before it passes to my kids. So when we write these for a married couple, I'm always looking at how well is the well spouse. Are they going to make it for 3 years? I just wrote one of these, though, for somebody who was 85 years old. She's in month 27 now. Well, I didn't just write it, but she's in month 27. She's doing great. So that's the easiest option for a married couple. But every case runs on its own facts, so you have to be careful. Depending on the nature of your assets, it can be hard to liquidate everything to buy an annuity. If everything's in a retirement account, we have to be careful about taxes. I'm giving you the 30,000-foot overview to let you know that there are always options. What if you're single? What if it's just mom? She can't buy an annuity for a spouse because she's not married anymore. Then what we do is we give away all mom's assets, either with a trust or with outright gifts. We give them away. We know that Medicaid is going to penalize us, okay? We give away mom's assets, so she's down to $2,000. We apply for Medicaid. She's in a facility, she qualifies. She's under $2,500, but she made a gift in the last 5 years. They look back 5 years for gifts. And how do they know? They have a computer system that runs all your bank statements, all of those things. And you have to provide them with copies of every single bank statement with mom's social security number on it. And they review them and go, hey, why'd mom write you a check for $15,000 last year? That's a gift. So you trigger the penalty. And then what? Month 1 comes, nursing home says, Medicaid's not paying for mom. Who's paying the bill? You have a big chunk of money here that you gifted. You write a check and you pay for mom. Month 2 comes, you write a check and you pay for mom. And somewhere, let's pretend she gave away $300,000. Let's pretend that's a 30-month penalty. $10,000, each $10,000 is 1 month. 30 months you have to pay. Somewhere around the 15-month mark, and it depends on mom's income, the cost of her care, all sorts of things. But usually right around the halfway point of that penalty period, we will run the magic numbers and say, Medicaid, you imposed a 30-month penalty because mom gave away $300,000. But we paid for her care for the last 15 months. So when we paid for her, it was kind of like we gave the money back to her. So she really didn't give away $300,000. She only gave away $150,000 because we've paid for the cost of her care every month for the last 15 months from the gifted assets. We returned the money. So it's really only a 15-month penalty, right? And they look and they go, oh yeah, you're right. It's only a 15-month penalty. Well, it's been 15 months. So the very next month, they start paying for mom's care. And you have $150,000 protected. That is available there to supplement mom's care, to pass to children, to do what mom wants with. It's no longer exposed to Medicaid. That strategy is called a half a loaf. You give away a whole loaf and you return a slice each month by paying the nursing home. And at the end of the day, usually about half the loaf is protected. That's what we do for single people who can't use a Medicaid annuity. And I know that your heads are now going, boom, like a mushroom cloud. But it just goes to show you every case runs on its facts, but we can pretty much protect assets even if mom's already in the nursing home. The 5-year look back, it's the penalty for giving stuff away, okay? You can't give away stuff, though. The penalty's not triggered until the date you apply, okay? Now, I want to note something. You can't give away assets to make yourself poor, except there are a couple exceptions. And the primary one that everybody should be aware of is that I can give away assets to a disabled child, and not a penny of what I give away is a gift. There's no penalty for it. So if that disabled child is collecting Social Security disability income and is otherwise competent to manage money, I could give all of my assets away to that disabled child and qualify for Medicaid the next day. Be careful. Disabled is a term of art, but it's something that people never really think about. What about the family home? So as I mentioned, generally the house is exempt. Medicaid doesn't require you to spend it down, okay? And especially if there's a spouse living in the house or a minor child, okay? So if I'm living in our home and my husband goes to a nursing home, they don't count our house unless the equity in the house is more than $636,000, okay? So if you have a really, really, really nice house and you don't want it to be lost because you've paid off the mortgage and it's worth $800,000, you might take out a home equity line, pull that out, roll that cash into a Medicaid annuity, okay? The title has to be in our name. I can't give it to my kids and go, oh, it's protected, because remember, 5-year gift. But there's a Medicaid lien. If you're a single person, you don't have to count the house as a resource when you spend down. But after you've been in the nursing home and Medicaid has paid for you for 6 months, they can put a lien against your house to be paid back when the house is sold at your death for what they've paid for the cost of your care. How else are the options to protect assets for a spouse? Well, remember I said my husband's income all gets paid to the nursing home when he's on Medicaid? If I have really low income, only a little bit of Social Security, I can use some of his income. I can ask them to let me keep some of it, okay? It's not a lot. It's about $2,300 total. But if I'm only getting $800 of Social Security, I can keep a portion of his income to help boost me. We can use a Medicaid annuity and then pre-crisis planning. So now I've got my husband on Medicaid in the facility and I've got all the assets. I need to be doing some pre-crisis planning of my own to protect it in the event I go into a nursing home down the road, okay? What are your takeaways? It is never too early to start planning. If you have a loved one that is living with you, for example, let's say mom or dad lives with you, you're basically providing for all of their care and they're living off of their income and their money is just sitting in the bank. If there's a level of trust between all of you, there's nothing that prevents you from gifting all of mom's assets, with mom and dad's permission, of course, into a trust and starting that 5-year clock ticking. 5 years from the date of that transfer, all those assets are protected if they ever go into a nursing home. So that's even a shorter period if they have a long-term care policy, right? Because if I put $1 million of mom's assets into a trust today, she's living with me, she goes to a nursing home in 2 years, and they go, start paying us $15,000 because she doesn't qualify for Medicaid because she transferred $1 million within the last 5 years. I pull down on her long-term care policy and I use that to pay for the next 3 years. One day after the 5-year mark, I say, okay, I'm applying for Medicaid. It's been 5 years and 1 day. The transfer of the $1 million is protected. We're good to go. Okay. So it's never too early to start planning. That's a unique situation, but we're seeing more and more clients living with their children. And then with proper planning, it's never too late to protect at least something. Even if even if you don't do the planning until you're in the nursing home or your loved one's in the nursing home, we can still stop the bleeding and protect some of it. And some is better than none. So I've depressed you all. I'm sorry. The takeaway is plan for your future and know that there are options. I'm going to open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. You've really given everyone a lot to think about in a humorous way. So we do have a few questions for you.
Okay.
And the first one is, if a person and the person's spouse both have long-term insurance, and you have named each other as beneficiaries, what does that mean when one of them dies?
So long-term care insurance, the typical long-term care policy, just pays benefits in a nursing home. Okay, that's all it does. There's no death benefit when I die. So if I don't ever use that insurance because I never go into a nursing home or an assisted living, it lapses. The only time there's a death benefit under a long-term care insurance policy, if it's one of those hybrid policies where there's long-term care insurance, and if you don't use it, then there's a death benefit in the form of life insurance. One key takeaway from all of this is, if my spouse is in a nursing home, he is not going to be a beneficiary under my estate plan or under any of my life insurance or any of those things. Because once I qualify him for Medicaid, the last thing I want to do is dump a windfall into his lap, because he'll lose his Medicaid benefits. Okay, so you shouldn't be naming each other if someone goes into a nursing home.
Okay, great. The next question is, does Medicare renew with each admission or only one time?
Okay. There is a qualifying period and a qualifying admission, and it depends. Usually it's each, so the lawyer answer is it depends, right? But usually it's a different issue. It's a different event. If mom goes in and out of the hospital, though, multiple times, and in and out of a nursing home multiple times, you need to be careful. You may not get a new 100 days each time. Every case is a little bit different. Sorry.
Okay. And the next question is, do children inherit their parents' debt upon their parents' death?
I am not responsible for anybody's debt unless I agree to be responsible. So the only people that a parent creditor can reach is the parent's assets, unless I signed the credit card slip. Okay. If I agreed to be a co-borrower on the credit card, then yeah, I'm on the hook for it. But when mom and dad die, their creditors reach their assets. That's it. Not me. Their credit card debt doesn't flow through to me unless I agreed to be. They have a mortgage on their house. The mortgage company always gets paid, folks, right? So I may inherit the house, but it will be subject to the mortgage, and then I will be responsible for paying it.
Okay. And the next question, I believe, pertained to qualification for Medicaid, but it said, does that include a Roth IRA as well?
Absolutely. A Roth IRA is a countable resource, which is a bummer because, we plan all these things for our retirement to save money, and then we forget about what happens if we get sick. How do we protect assets if we need care going forward? And a Roth IRA is a countable resource, yes.
Okay. And then the next one is, how long have the single premium immediate annuities been available?
Years. We've been doing this for at least 20 years. Remember, though, that's a very, very specialized product. It is only purchased right before you qualify someone from a married couple for Medicaid. You can't go out to market and buy them. There's only a few vendors that sell them, but they've been around a long time. They're different than the regular annuities that might be part of someone's portfolio. Okay, they're a very different thing. Your financial advisor might talk to you about an annuity. That's a different thing than this particular item.
Okay. And then there's another one, if you can explain the Medicare annuity.
It's a Medicaid annuity, the single premium Medicaid annuity. That's the buying, taking all the extra resources from a married couple that they aren't allowed to have, buying the Medicaid annuity for the well spouse so that the sick spouse qualifies for Medicaid immediately.
Okay. And then the next question is, should we start with an estate attorney and then seek assistance from an estate planner?
So most estate planning attorneys do wills, powers of attorney, and healthcare directives. If you're ever going to do Medicaid planning, you should seek an elder law attorney, somebody who does elder law planning in their mix. Okay. Not every estate planner does elder law Medicaid protection. Okay.
Okay. Great. And then if I am power of attorney for my parent, am I required to pay their bills upon death?
No, you are not personally liable for their debts. And a power of attorney lapses when someone dies, right? So you no longer are the power of attorney the moment they pass away. Now their debts are part of their estates.
Okay. Terrific. So I think that concludes our questions. And there were a few people that had to leave, but express their thanks and appreciation to you for the wonderful presentation. So I'd just like to echo that, Cheryl, and thank you. And it was a wonderful presentation. I think really helpful, a lot to sort out.